All right, community group types. Fun. This is where Bob comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, squirrels, every rodent across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Killen.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm kind of running around quite a bit. Is there any way to get notes?
I will work on that right now.
Okay. I can pull up notes on my phone too.
Yeah, do that.
Sorry, one sec. In the meantime, if you have not started, please git clone the Kubernetes repo. Sorry, folks, one sec.
This is so much fun. This isn't a fragile system at all. There.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'll be okay. Oh. Unable to connect your, okay. Whoa.
You good, Bob? What do you need?
Oh, it's just taking a sec. Okay, sorry about that short delay. So the Kubernetes community is a very large distributed team of people. And to help sort of wrangle that large team, we separate responsibilities and tasks into several different types of groups. The four here. They are special interest groups, working groups, user groups, and committees. So SIGs, special interest groups, are sort of the foundation of the Kubernetes project and sort of where the majority of, or like they drive the majority of work. Working groups are formed when SIGs need to actually do something that impacts multiple SIGs, and they're like bound by they're time bounded or goal bounded. Like we'll terminate this working group once we complete the specific task. Then user groups actually provide a means for end users to sort of collaborate along with providing like a sort of unifying voice to drive specific features in the upstream community. And our last group, committees, they're actually elected and they tend to handle sensitive materials and like things that are related to the code of conduct or the like security related things. So most of the groups in the project are SIGs. And they sort of serve as our primary org unit. The others that are there are largely in to like support them in the work that they do. So SIGs themselves can actually be quite large, and so they divide the work within their group into what's known as sub-projects. So every single part of Kubernetes, any piece of code, any initiative has to belong to a sub-project. And we'll sort of like see how that breakdown of ownership happens in a little bit. But most of the sort of sub-projects map to like a specific repo or a specific section of code. And working groups, sort of as I touched on just a second ago, are honestly ephemeral, and they're really founded when we get together, do something, and then disband again. Actually, a pretty good example of this is the server-side apply working group. It's sponsored by the SIG CLI and SIG API machinery. They have come together to make server-side apply happen, and when that is done, they will disband. User groups are actually pretty new. They only came about, I think it was like early this year. Yeah, early this year. Let's see, and they provide a means for, the end users to get together. The big thing is that they do not own any code whatsoever. They are there to, if you have problems, you come together, you can like bubble up specific things that are the largest impacting ones, or if you want specific features, you can bubble up the largest impacted ones, and then they can be brought up to the other groups to try and drive priority. And committees themselves, they don't have org membership, or they don't have, the people are elected. They tend to be a bit more private. So again, like the code of conduct, the platform security committee, and the steering committee itself. The people in these roles are like, the people that manage the community is actually the steering committee, which is in itself elected by the greater Kubernetes community as a whole. So SIGs themselves, they sort of sound like a large meetup group, and it sort of is and it sort of isn't. They are their own sub-community and tend to like generally self-manage themselves. How one SIG handles work and dividing out effort might be different from another SIG. There are some things that are like pretty uniform across the group, across like all of them, but they all sort of have their own little subtle differences. So if you're curious about this stuff, each SIG has a charter that defines what they are tasked with. It states what is sort of like in and out of scope for them. It lists sort of the broad areas that they are tasked with the stewardship of. It also like includes some of their own self-governing processes if they have anything that sort of like differs from the rest of the organization. They will also sort of like list what sort of working groups that they have a stakeholder in. Every SIG itself, this pretty much honestly holds true for the working groups, user groups, and most of them. They have their own mailing list, and in general, a Slack channel. The easiest way to sort of like get a feel for this stuff is to join that mailing list. And if you're curious where this stuff is, you can sort of see at the bottom there the git.k8s.io community governance thing. If you just go to git.k8s.io/community, it's the community repo. And every SIG, every working group, every user group has a folder in this directory, in this repo, that outlines all this stuff. It includes their mailing list, their Slack channels, all their means of communication, all their subprojects. Everything is in the K community repo. So there are actually several different types of SIGs. We don't have a actual designation, like this isn't like a specific type, but they all sort of handle specific areas, and these can be broken down into a couple different types. There's sort of project-wide, horizontal, vertical groups, and the vertical ones can actually be broken down a little bit further into like apps, resource management, and infrastructure. So this is a picture sort of our current groups in the general breakdown. I know it can look a little complex, but it sort of breaks down like this. The top section, the project groups, these sort of impact or provide services to the project and community as a whole. They are things like managing the infrastructure and testing, as well as like the release processes for the entire Kubernetes project. So this is like SIG testing, SIG release. There's also things like contributor experience, and contributor experience is sort of tasked with putting on events like this. Next, we have horizontal, and these are like cross-cutting areas. So these sort of touch a lot of different places. So these are things like API machinery, scalability, Windows, a whole slew of different ones up there. Lastly, we have vertical on the bottom. These tend to have like very specific focuses. So like storage or networking. You can also sort of see the breakdown of application, resource management, and infrastructure. I'm going to actually go over all these different SIGs and working groups and sort of like provide a one sentence elevator pitch for each one. This will be useful for later during the meet and greet, or if you are any of these things pique your interest, you can go to the intro or deep dive sessions later during KubeCon itself. So our project SIGs, we have SIG architecture, and they sort of ensure that features are being developed that adhere to the design principles of Kubernetes itself. So this is mostly things like API review. We want to make sure everything sort of follows the patterns that the Kubernetes project has agreed upon. Next, we have Contribex, or contributor experience. I'm sorry, we get used to saying Contribex as the shorthand for it all the time. And its big focus is that it does everything it can to sort of maintain a healthy contributor community. So that, talks about putting on events like this to get more people onboarded and, developing or helping develop the upstream Kubernetes project. Docs owns, K website, or Kubernetes / website. It's kubernetes.io that you go to. It's sort of self-explanatory. Next we have PM. Project management, and it provides some project management services to other SIGs and owns some of the processes around managing the project. So this is things like enhancements or features and other things of that nature. Release. Release ensures the quality of Kubernetes releases and manages the entire release process. So every quarter there's a Kubernetes release. They go through the process of electing a release team, and they sort of wrangle, all the features that are going to be in there, handle all the bug triage for that release, and work towards actually cutting it itself. Gwyn is actually the release lead for 117 this cycle. So pulling double duty. Next we have, testing, and they sort of handle the management of the test infrastructure. I want to make that very clear. They don't actually write the tests for you. They handle the testing infrastructure. And last, we have usability, which is a pretty recent SIG. And their focus is in essentially improving the core end user usability of the Kubernetes project itself. Where is it difficult for people to actually use it? They want to improve and streamline that process. Next, we have our big round of horizontal SIGs. API machinery. They essentially own everything related to the API server and how it uses the storage backend, et cetera, auth, authentication, authorization, and security policies. We again, sort of self-explanatory. CLI, kubectl, kubectl, kubecontrol. Yeah, all of them, whatever, yeah. Instrumentation, they handle metrics logging and how Kubernetes itself emits events. Multi-cluster is focused on the development and tooling and solving sort of common challenges related to the management of multiple Kubernetes clusters. It's multi-cluster is becoming sort of the big hot topic right now. Scalability defines sort of the scalability goals for Kubernetes itself and works on improving the general performance of it, as well as removing various bottlenecks that might prevent it from scaling further. If you're interested in getting Kubernetes to support up to 20,000 nodes, that's a good group to get involved with. UI owns the Kubernetes dashboard, and Windows pretty much owns everything Windows related. Now we get into our vertical SIGs a little bit. So apps, if you've ever created a deployment, a service, or not a service, a stateful set, anything where you get that, apps/v1 or something like that, that is owned by apps. Service catalog, they actually are tasked with sort of building an interface for the Open Service Broker API. In the sort of honestly, the resource management section, these are pretty self-explanatory. Network handles network. Scheduling handles scheduling. Storage handles storage. Node is kubelet. And auto-scaling is everything related to like auto-scaling components. Our last one's cloud provider. They essentially like are tasked to like ensure that Kubernetes itself is neutral to all public and private like cloud providers and provide sort of like the right hooks and integration points so that way they can like hook into it and make a good experience. And then cluster lifecycle, they sort of handle the managing like the management of the upgrade, downgrade, and provisioning of clusters. If you've heard of like cluster API, that's become like, a very popular thing. And it's all owned by cluster lifecycle. And as mentioned, like SIGs themselves all have their own sub-projects. And the sub-projects themselves might have their own mailing lists. They do own code, own issues. The roadmap of it is owned by the SIG itself. And most of this stuff is actually found in the Kubernetes SIG org. Did you happen to go over like the different orgs, the different Kubernetes orgs earlier? Like Kubernetes, Kubernetes SIGs, Kubernetes client, some of those ones? Okay, here. Just need to pull up in a browser quick. Sorry. Okay. So Kubernetes actually has it'd be helpful if I could spell things right. Yep. So Kubernetes itself has multiple organizations, not just the Kubernetes GitHub org. And a lot of the sort of projects that have their own code base exist in Kubernetes SIGs. So there's projects like custom, and you can actually see in the tags for each repo, and this has the like owning SIG. So crew is owned by SIG CLI. Release notes is owned by SIG release, and so on. But if you want to like, contribute to Kubernetes, you don't have to do it in the main, Kubernetes org. There's a lot that goes on outside of it in here, and this is a great place to start. I won't bother with full screening for now. Tabs will be okay. So for this, I'm mostly just going to give a quick overview of the working groups like I did SIGs. Big thing to remember is that they are sort of like very task-focused or very focused on solving a specific problem. So our project working groups include the security audit working group, K8's Infra, and LTS. Security audit, I don't know if you saw, it was, I think like 2 months ago, they published the Kubernetes security audit and like made a whole slew of like recommendations. I don't know if it's actually going to be spinning down soon, if they're going to be continuing effort, but it was formed essentially to do that audit of the Kubernetes code base. K8's Infra is like sort of tasked right now with automating, migrating, and maintaining the Kubernetes like testing infrastructure, because like right now it's actually still maintained by a lot of Googlers and not in a publicly accessible place. So this has been a multi-year effort to get it, outside of the Google-owned infrastructure to the CNCF-owned infrastructure. And lastly, we have LTS. Which was put together to sort of answer the question if Kubernetes should actually maintain an LTS release. If so, how much effort would actually be involved with it and the need to support it. Our horizontal working groups include apply. You heard me talking about this a little bit earlier. They're an effort from CLI and API machinery to work towards supporting server-side apply. Right now, if you do an apply with kubectl, it's actually your client that's handling that process, not the server. And they want to move that all server-side. Next, we have component standard, and it is right now there isn't a standard around the Kubernetes CLI flags and configs, so they are sort of building some libraries and standardizing that across all the different components. Multi-tenancy is sort of defining the model of multi-tenancy that Kubernetes will support and generally improve the multi-tenancy posture. And lastly, we have policy, which is sort of there to provide an overall architecture that describes both the current policy-related implementations and sort of decide the future policy efforts. So if you've heard of pod security policies, they've been sitting around in beta for a long time. Right now, they don't know if they're trying to decide if Kubernetes itself should continue to maintain the policies or just spin them out separately. We're kind of on the end of this big list. I know it's kind of just me reading this stuff off. We have machine learning and edge. Machine learning is there to essentially decide what features are needed to better support ML workloads and how they should be prioritized upstream. It's sort of very similar to a user group. IoT edge sort of has the same purpose, but instead of machine learning, it is edge computing. And lastly, we have resource management, and they've been working towards improve the support for performance-sensitive workloads, as well as supporting other additional devices like GPUs. Okay, I got through that list. I'm sorry. I know it's kind of a lot just read off, but anyway. Huh? Do I have a what?
Is there going to be a quiz?
Oh, quiz. No.
There's not going to be a quiz, but you're going to get a chance to meet most of these six later.
Yep. So that quick little primer I did for each one of them, later on today we have the SIG meet and greet. So if any of those things sort of piqued your interest, those would be a good SIG to prioritize going to the meet and greet. Actually. So, let's see. When it comes to all this, and honestly just sort of talked about it a second ago, if you want to know more about these SIGs and the different things, get a bit more info about it, you can go to the SIG list in the root of the Kubernetes community repo. There is a list of all the SIGs and all the different things that they have, and from there you can sort of follow hot links to go to the SIG readmes, and in there it includes all the sub-projects and what they're doing. And if you found one that, meshes with you, on that page, you can, they'll have the links for the mailing list and the Slack channel and all that stuff, and that's a great place to start. And as that place to start, that really is just how you actually join a SIG. You literally join the mailing list. And if you feel getting joining in the fire hose that is Slack sometimes, you join the Slack channel. Let's see. Now, one thing I do want to make clear with all this is that to join a SIG, to participate, you do not need to be a Kubernetes org member. Org membership is something to work towards. When you get involved with a SIG, you start getting some PRs, you start helping with them, you go through the process of finding a sponsor. Did you cover org membership, or is that later? Okay, cool. I won't dive deep into that then. That's for later. But you will go through the process of climbing the contributor ladder to eventually become a member, owner, etc. These are there just for, if you're going through the slides later and want links to follow for if you want to learn a little bit more about the government's model. And there's the list, the link to the big SIG list. I started this a little bit a second ago. So even though we have all these SIGs, they have all the different subprojects that like exist in Kubernetes SIGs. They also own like entire sections of the main Kubernetes code base. And you'll eventually see like how that relates to like, owners files and which SIGs own which code. But you can sort of get a list of that already going to, oops. I'm gonna put this down. So pop over to API machinery. So you can see all the different parts. Here's all their subprojects for API machinery. You can see there's a mix of stuff between like Kubernetes SIGs, Kubernetes. We'll pop over to, oh, that's right, I did in this tab. The Kubernetes SIGs org again, where you can see all the different projects here. Kubernetes right now, like under all the different orgs, has roughly just under 200 projects. So it's a pretty large ecosystem of stuff. And just sort of at like how the SIG sort of have their own sort of processes and things like that. Each repo, each subproject might actually have its own set of rules regarding like ownership, approval workflows, and that sort of stuff. You generally will see the same stuff in the Kubernetes repo, but the little subprojects in Kubernetes SIGs might be a little bit different. If you have any questions, the best way again is to like look at the mailing list, look at the pop into Slack and ask them a question there. I will say though, like in general, while there might be a little differences, they do tend to be pretty similar across the board. I think at this point I hand it back to Gwen.
All right, thank you so much, Bob. This is the part where we're going to split up into the beginner and the intermediate workshop. Here's how you decide which one you should be in. First of all, this wall is going to come down, and the beginners are going to be on that side of the room, and the intermediate folks are going to be on this side of the room. So reorganize yourselves accordingly. The way that you want to decide which room you want to be in is if you are comfortable with Go, if you know how to set up a Go path, if you're comfortable with Docker, Git, and I believe those are the main things. If you are comfortable with those things and you have a Linux setup, a Linux or Linux-like setup on your machine, you want to be in the intermediate workshop. If you want help getting started from the bottom up and get a lot of detail and get a lot of help, you want to be in the beginner workshop.